This happened a few years ago, early February, when I was 24. I was broke, in that specific way where you're not homeless broke, but rent is due and your bank app makes you feel sick when you open it. So I was doing weekend gig work with my friend Cody, just random stuff, helping people move, hauling junk, delivering furniture, whatever we could find on Facebook Marketplace and those local gig groups. That Saturday, we drove way out into the rural part of our county because this guy paid us cash to move a heavy sectional couch from his dad's place into a storage unit. It was one of those it'll take an hour things that turns into a whole afternoon because the couch doesn't fit through the door and everybody has an opinion and you end up taking the legs off and scraping the wall. By the time we left, it was already getting dark and the weather app on my iPhone was doing that thing where it upgrades from snow to winter storm warning. We still thought we'd be fine because honestly, people always think they'll be fine. We were in Cody's Subaru Outback, which is basically the most I swear I'm prepared for anything car ever. It had decent tires, AWD, all that. Cody was driving and talking about this game he was grinding, and I was half listening, half watching the road. And I remember we kept saying stuff like, worst case, we'll just hit that Waffle House on Route 6 because there's one about 12 miles back from where we were. Like we had a backup plan, like the weather cared. The snow started light, then it wasn't light. The wipers started icing up to the point they were just smearing slush around. The heater was on full blast, but it felt like it was losing a fight. The road markers on the side started disappearing behind white. It got that white tunnel feeling, where everything ahead of you is just the same color, and your eyes start doing weird stuff. And it hit me that we hadn't seen another set of headlights in a long time. Not in front, not behind, nothing. I should also mention something that didn't feel important until later. Earlier on the main road, before we turned off onto the back roads, there was this dark pickup behind us for a while. Not like tailgating, but just there. Same turns, same pace. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to sound paranoid and Cody would have laughed at me anyway. Then at one point, it wasn't behind us anymore. It just vanished, which is normal, right? People turn, people pull off. But later, that memory came back and made my stomach hurt. Anyway, we're out there and the Subaru starts sliding a little on the curves. Not full spin out, but that floaty feeling where the car isn't fully listening to the steering wheel. Cody goes, "Dude, if we end up in a ditch, my sister Megan is gonna kill me." And I joked like, "At least Megan will have to pay your half of the rent." We were still doing that thing where you joke because the other option is admitting you're actually worried. Then the car slid harder and Cody overcorrected and the right side tires dropped off the edge into a shallow ditch. It wasn't deep, but the snow was packed weird and the whole car tilted just enough for my heart to jump. Cody tried to gas it out and it just made that sad spinning sound. Snow spraying, no movement. We got out and the cold hit like a slap. It was that kind of cold where it hurts to breathe, like your lungs burn. We tried pushing, like idiots, in a blizzard. The snow was up past my ankles and it was drifting fast. Cody slipped and went down hard, and I heard him say, "Ow," in that way where you're trying not to yell but you can't help it. He got up limping and he goes, "I think I messed up my ankle." And I looked at the road and the trees and the dark, and it hit me how stupid it would be to just start walking. We didn't have signal. I checked anyway, holding my phone up like that ever works. One bar, then none. Cody's phone was doing the same thing. And I know what you're thinking. Stay in the car, call 911, don't go wandering. Yeah, I get it. But the car was half in a ditch, the snow was getting worse by the minute, and Cody was limping. Also, and this is important, my phone battery was low because I'd been using GPS all day. It was at like 7%. Cody's was worse, he was at 3%. We had chargers, but the car was acting weird, like it didn't want to turn over clean. We tried starting it again. It coughed and clicked, and then nothing. So we stood there, basically getting sandblasted by snow, and tried to think. That's when Cody pointed through the trees and goes, "Is that a light?" At first I thought it was just the way snow reflects stuff, but then I saw it too. A steady yellow porch light deeper in the woods, off the road. Not far, maybe a couple 100 feet. And in that moment, it felt like luck, like an actual break. We had no other options that made sense. Walking back 12 miles to a Waffle House with a messed up ankle in a storm like that, that's how you end up on the news. So, yeah, we headed toward the light. The snow was loud, not like a sound you hear in movies, but more like constant wind rushing past your ears. My eyelashes were getting crusty. My fingers went numb even inside my gloves. When we got close enough to see it clearly, it was a cabin. Not some creepy abandoned shack. It looked lived in. There was stacked firewood on the side, a shovel by the steps, a normal porch light. I even saw one of those welcome mats that said something basic like home. It made it feel safer, weirdly enough. Like, okay, a regular person lives here. We got up on the porch and Cody knocked. Nothing at first. He knocked again, harder, and I remember thinking, please don't make us stand out here like idiots. Finally, the door opened. A guy stood there, maybe mid-50s, could have been 45, could have been 60. He had a thick jacket on and a beanie, gray in his beard. Not smiling, but not angry either, just calm. He looked at us like he already knew we were coming. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's the only way I can explain it. He didn't look surprised at all. Cody goes, "Hey, sorry, our car slid off the road. Do you have a phone? We don't have service." The guy just stared for a second and goes, "Get in before you freeze." That should have felt nice, like relief. And part of me did feel relief. My teeth were chattering. We stepped inside and the warmth hit my face so hard it almost hurt, like when you warm your hands too fast and they sting. The cabin smelled like wet Carhartt jackets and old coffee. There was a Mr. Buddy propane heater going in the corner, the kind people use for ice fishing in garages. It was angled toward a couch. There was a small kitchen area, a table with junk on it, and a wall with papers pinned up like a little notice board. The guy shut the door behind us, and the wind noise went away, and suddenly it felt way too quiet. I said, "Thank you, seriously. We just need to warm up and charge our phones for like 10 minutes, and we'll be out of your hair." I said that because I didn't want him to think we were trying to invite ourselves in. I didn't want to be rude. And also, I wanted to believe we could just fix it fast and leave, like it was still a normal problem. He nodded like sure. Cody limped towards the couch and sat down, and the guy looked at his ankle and goes, "He can rest there." Then he looked at me and goes, "You can come help me with the generator." And right away, I didn't like that. It wasn't like he said it mean, but it was immediate, like he wanted to split up as fast as possible. I hesitated and I said, I can just stay." He cut me off, still calm, and goes, "It's out back. Won't take long. Power's been acting up." I looked at Cody, and Cody did that thing where he tries to be tough, like he's fine. Cody goes, "Go ahead, dude. My ankle's just tweaked." And I know I should have trusted my gut feeling, but I also didn't want to act like some scared kid. Plus, we needed the power. We needed to charge our phones. We needed the car to start. We needed something. So I said, "Okay, yeah." Before I followed him, I walked over to the wall with the outlets so I could plug my phone in. My hands were shaking so much I fumbled the charger. My phone popped up with 6%. The guy didn't offer his phone, didn't ask if we needed an ambulance, didn't ask our names. None of the normal questions you'd expect when two strangers show up half frozen in a blizzard. He just watched me plug my phone in, then opened a back door like, "Come on." I followed him 2 steps, and then I stopped because I noticed the papers pinned up on that wall. It was like a random cluster. A weather printout, a hunting license, a couple receipts, one of those little maps you get from a state park office. Normal stuff. And then I saw a piece of paper with big, bold letters at the top. Missing. At first, my brain didn't even process it. It was like seeing a word you recognize, but not reading it. Then I looked at the photo, and it was me. Not kind of looks like me, it was me. The photo was from my mom's Facebook. I knew because I hated that picture. It was from a family cookout where I had ketchup on my shirt and my hair was sticking up. The paper was a little wrinkled, like it had been handled, like it wasn't printed 5 minutes ago. It looked like it had been up for at least a few days, maybe longer. My mouth went dry instantly. I leaned in closer because my brain was trying to save me by making excuses. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's someone who looks like me. Maybe it's some weird joke. But then I saw my last name. My last name isn't common, and it was spelled the exact way ours is spelled, which people mess up all the time. And there was a little detail under the photo that mentioned a small scar on my chin. I have a small scar on my chin from falling off a skateboard when I was like 10. My stomach dropped so hard I actually felt a little sick. My hands went numb even though I was standing right by the heater. And the guy was still behind me, close enough that I could smell his clothes, like smoke and something sour. He said, really casually, like he was making conversation, "Your mom's probably checking her phone like crazy right now." I didn't tell him my mom. I didn't tell him my name. I just stood there staring at that poster like my brain was buffering, like it couldn't load what was happening. Then he said my first name, just once, like he'd known me for years. I don't even remember the exact sentence. I just remember hearing my name in his voice and feeling my heart slam in my chest. For a second, everything got that tunnel hearing thing, like the heater got quieter and the world shrunk down to my heartbeat and that piece of paper. I turned around and tried to keep my face normal. I know that sounds dumb, like how do you keep your face normal after that? But I didn't want him to know I was scared. I didn't want him to think I knew. Because the second he knows you know, anything can happen. I forced a weird little laugh and I said, "Oh, that's crazy, that guy looks like me." He didn't laugh, he just looked at me, calm, patient, like he had time. I said, "Hey, I'm just gonna check on my buddy real quick, his ankle is messed up." He nodded, like he was allowing it. I walked back toward the couch. My legs felt shaky, like I'd stood up too fast. Cody looked up at me and goes, "You good?" I tried to say it with my eyes first because I didn't want the guy to hear. I gave Cody this look and a slight head shake like, no, not good. Cody's face changed immediately. Cody's not a genius, but he's not stupid either. He saw something in me. I leaned in and I whispered, "We're leaving right now." Cody whispered back, "What? Why?" I didn't want to say missing poster out loud. It felt like saying it would make it real. So I just said, "Trust me." Then, because I needed an excuse that wouldn't sound insane, I said louder, "Dude, I think the car alarm is going off." There was no car alarm. We weren't even close enough to hear it if it was, but I needed something that sounded urgent and normal. Cody played along, thank God. He groaned like, "Are you serious?" I turned to the guy and I put on this apologetic voice and I said, "Sorry, that's my friend's car. He's got this weird alarm. We'll be right back." I hate that I said, "We'll be right back," but I thought if I said, "We're leaving," he'd block the door. The guy stepped slightly to the side, like he was letting us pass, but his eyes stayed on us. I helped Cody up. His ankle really was messed up. He was putting weight on me and hopping, and I was thinking, if this turns into a chase, we're done. We're actually done. We got to the front door and I reached for the knob. The guy said, still calm, "It's too cold. You'll be back." That made my skin crawl, because it wasn't a threat exactly. It was like he was stating a fact, like he'd already decided how the night would go. I opened the door and the cold punched me again. My lungs burned on the first breath. Cody and I half ran, half stumbled through the snow back toward the road. The wind was so strong it felt like it was pushing us sideways. I looked back once. The guy was standing in the doorway, not chasing, not yelling, just watching us. The porch light behind him made his face look flat and weird. He lifted one hand slightly, like a slow wave, or like he was telling us to hurry up. We got to the Subaru and it was covered in fresh snow already, like it had been sitting there for hours, not minutes.
I yanked the driver's door open and basically threw Cody into the passenger seat. I ran around and got in. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the key in. Cody goes, "What the hell was that?" And I finally said it. He has a missing poster of me on his wall. Cody just stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "What?" "I'm not joking," I said. "My face, my name, everything." Cody's eyes went wide and he looked back toward the trees. "Start the car! Start the car!" I turned the key. Click. Nothing. I felt my whole body go hot, like pure panic. I tried again. Click. A weak cough. I honestly thought that was it. I thought we were about to sit there while that guy walked up to the car like it was normal. And I know I should have been calling 911, but there was still no service, and my phone was at 5%, and my fingers were so numb I could barely feel the screen.
I tried a third time, and the engine actually turned over. It sputtered and caught like it didn't want to, but it started. I slammed it into gear, and we pulled forward, tires spinning, then grabbing, then sliding. I didn't even care about getting the car perfectly out of the ditch. I just needed distance. I just needed the trees between us and that porch light. The Subaru fishtailed, and for a second I thought we were going to spin out and crash, and I remember Cody yelling, "Go, go, go!" I kept driving, white-knuckle grip, barely seeing the road. The snow made everything look the same. I kept expecting headlights behind us. I kept expecting to see that dark pickup in my mirror. We didn't talk for a few minutes, not because we were calm, because we were trying not to die on the road. Eventually, we hit a stretch where the wind wasn't as bad, and I got one bar of service for like 10 seconds, then it dropped again. Cody's phone started vibrating in his hand, and he looks down and goes, "Megan." He had missed calls, like a bunch. She'd been checking on him because she knew the weather was getting bad. He called her back the second the phone let him. The call kept cutting in and out, but he got out, "We're okay," and "We're coming back," and "Don't freak out." I didn't say anything on that call. I didn't want Megan hearing me hyperventilating. And I didn't want to explain it over a breaking phone line like some crazy person. By the time we got back to the main road, we finally got steady service. I looked at my phone and it was at 2%. It died right after. We drove to the first open place we could find, which was a gas station with one pump working and a guy inside who looked like he'd been awake for 2 days. Cody bought a coffee just to have an excuse to be in a lit building. I used the charger in the car to get my phone back on long enough to call my mom because I couldn't not call her after what that guy said. My mom answered on the first ring, and she sounded half asleep and annoyed, like, "What is it?" And I almost said nothing, because how do you say, "Hey, there's a missing poster of me on some stranger's wall"? I just said, "I'm okay. I just wanted to hear your voice." There was a pause, and she goes, "Are you drunk?" I said no. I said I love you. She said, "Okay," and that was it. Then Cody and I sat in the Subaru with the heater blasting, and we finally called the sheriff's office. And I know some people are going to say we should have called right away, but it didn't feel real. It felt like if we called, they'd ask for an address and we'd have nothing. Yeah, hi, I was almost kidnapped by a calm, older guy in a cabin in the woods somewhere in a blizzard. It sounds stupid. Plus, we were embarrassed. We literally walked into a stranger's cabin like idiots. The dispatcher asked where it was, and I tried to explain the turns we took in the approximate area, but I'm not a local map. It was snowing so hard that everything looked different. She said they couldn't send anyone right then because the roads were getting blocked and they had accidents already. She said they'd check the area when it's safe. That sentence made me feel even worse because I knew exactly what "when it's safe" meant. It meant not tonight. The next day, when the storm calmed down a little, Cody's ankle was swollen and purple. He went to urgent care and they gave him a boot and told him it wasn't broken, just badly sprained. I drove with my dad later that afternoon, trying to find that road again. I wanted proof that I wasn't crazy. I wanted to see the cabin from a distance, in daylight, with someone else there. We went back and forth on those rural roads for like 2 hours. We found the ditch where the car had slid. We found the general stretch of trees.
But we did not find that cabin. There were no tire tracks leading off, no porch light, no stacked firewood, nothing. At one point, we saw a different cabin farther down, but it didn't match. The layout was wrong, the porch was wrong, and it didn't have that same feeling of this is it. The sheriff called me a couple days later and basically said they drove around too and couldn't locate anything matching what I described. He wasn't rude, but I could tell he didn't take it that seriously, like it was just another weird story from a storm night. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe there's a normal explanation for the missing poster. Maybe the guy found it somewhere and put it up as a joke. Maybe it wasn't even my poster and my brain just panicked and filled in details. But I know what I saw. I know my last name was on it. I know that photo came from my mom's Facebook, and I know that man said my name and mentioned my mom like he'd been in our lives. I don't know why my poster was on that wall. I don't know how he knew my name.
I just know I don't stop for lights in the woods anymore. And if I ever get stuck in snow like that again, I'd rather sit in a dead car and freeze than step into a warm place that feels too ready for me. This happened a few years ago, early February, when my friend Evan and I took this cheap last-minute ski trip up to a small lodge in the mountains. It was one of those places you find online where the pictures look fine and the reviews are like, clean enough, great location, and the price is the main reason you click. The only problem was the weather. A storm was rolling in and everyone knew it. The roads going up were already getting that shiny, icy look, and you could see the clouds sitting low on the tree line. But the room was non-refundable. Like the kind you click I agree and don't even read it because you're trying to save money. And Evan had been talking about skiing for months, so we were both in that mindset of, it'll be fine, we'll just do one night, ski a little, head home. We drove up in Evan's Subaru Outback because, of course, it was a Subaru. The car was already covered in salt and slush by the time we pulled into the parking lot. And the parking lot was basically empty, like maybe 6 cars, and it was a whole lodge. That should have been the first sign that we were the only idiots still going through with it. We checked in around 4:30 p.m. The guy at the front desk was nice, but he looked tired in that I've been dealing with angry people all day way. He told us, super casually, just so you know, we're closing the lobby early tonight. Storm's supposed to get worse. Restaurants already closed too. I remember Evan doing that thing where he tries to be chill and joke with staff, like, so you're telling me the complimentary breakfast is going to be a blizzard for breakfast? The guy didn't laugh. He just did this polite smile and handed us our key cards. He pointed at this printed sign on the counter that said something like, lobby hours 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and underneath it, closed due to weather conditions, may change without notice. It was one of those signs that's been used 100 times. We grabbed snacks from a gas station on the way up because we'd already heard the restaurant was closed. We had beef jerky, a bag of Doritos, and those little tiny bottles of Coke. Evan also had a pack of hot hands in his jacket pocket like he was preparing for war. Our room was on the 2nd floor, down this long hallway that felt older than both of us. Half the lights were off, like they were trying to save electricity, and the carpet had that old hotel pattern that hides stains. The room itself was fine. Nothing fancy. 2 beds, a dresser, a TV bolted to the wall, one of those old beige landline phones bolted to the nightstand, like the kind you can't move because it's screwed down. Next to it was a little paper card that said in faded print, dial 0 for front desk. If you've ever stayed at one of those older lodges where the room phone is bolted to the nightstand, you already know where this is going. We changed out of our wet stuff, hung gloves and socks over the chairs, and kicked our rental boots near the door. Evan's boots were killing him, and he wouldn't stop complaining about it. Also, he'd tweaked his ankle earlier on the slopes. Not like a full injury, but he was limping in that stubborn way where he's pretending it's fine. It matters later, which is annoying because I wish it didn't. We ended up turning on the TV and flipping through cable. It was one of those nights where the weather makes you want to just sit and be lazy. We put on Kitchen Nightmares because it was on and it's easy. Then we started playing Mario Kart on Evan's Switch, sitting on the bed like we were 12. At maybe 7 o'clock, the lodge called our room once. Caller ID said front desk. I remember because Evan pointed at it like, "See? Fancy." I answered and it was a normal call. The guy said, "Hey, just letting you know, quiet hours start at 10 and breakfast is canceled tomorrow. Weather's supposed to be worse overnight." I said, "Yeah, no problem." And that was it. Totally normal. Honestly, kind of helpful. So later on, when the phone rang again, I didn't think much of it at first. It was around 10:05 p.m. We just stopped playing Mario Kart because Evan's ankle was bothering him, and we were both laying there, half watching TV, half scrolling our phones. The Wi-Fi was spotty, and our cell service kept dropping to 1 bar, which was annoying but not scary, just mountain stuff. The room phone rang. I looked at the little screen, front desk. I answered and said, "Hello?" And there was nothing. Not like silence, but like breathing. Like the receiver was pressed against someone's face and you could hear that soft air sound. I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at it like that would explain anything. Then I put it back and said, "Hello?" Click. Hung up. Evan looked over and went, "What was that?" I shrugged. Probably a wrong room, or the phone system's weird. And I know people are going to say, "Why didn't you call right back?" But at the time, I didn't want to be that guest. It was a mostly empty lodge, the staff already looked stressed, and I'm sitting there thinking, it's a phone glitch. I'm not going to call and be like, "Hi, your phone breathed at me." Plus, like, where are we going? It's 10 at night, it's snowing harder, the roads were already bad, and we already paid for the room. So we went back to watching TV. Then the phone rang again. This time it was like 10:17 p.m. Same thing, front desk. Evan actually sat up and said, "Don't answer it." And I did anyway because I'm an idiot, but also because of that earlier legit call. In my head, I'm thinking, maybe they forgot to tell us something. Maybe they're moving guests around. Maybe they're shutting off water. I don't know. I answered. "Yeah?" Dead air again, but longer. Like whoever it was wasn't rushing to hang up this time. I could hear the faintest sound, like movement on the other end. Not talking, just there. Then the same click. Hung up. Evan went, "Dude, that's weird." I laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It's probably just the line, or like someone hitting the wrong extension. Evan was trying to downplay it too because that's what people do when they don't want to get freaked out. He said, "It's an old lodge, the phone probably does that." But after the second one, I did that thing where you start paying attention to every little sound in the room. The heater clicked on. I jumped. The ice machine down the hall made a noise. I sat up. And then around 10:30-ish, the phone rang again. Front desk. Evan literally pointed at it like it was offending him. "Bro, no." I answered anyway, but this time I didn't say hello right away. I just listened. Breathing. And it sounded close, like the person wasn't holding the phone away, like their mouth was right there. My mouth went dry, that gross feeling like you've been chewing cotton. I finally said, "Front desk?" Click. Evan stared at me for a second and then said, "Call them, like call them back." So I picked up the phone and dialed 0. The little card said that's how you do it. It rang, and rang, and rang. Nobody answered. I hung up and tried again. Same thing, just ringing. Evan goes, "Didn't he say they're closing the lobby early?" I said, "Yeah, but maybe someone's still there, like security or something." I know how that sounds, like why assume there's security when the place looks like it has 3 employees total? But my brain was looking for the easiest explanation. I tried calling the lodge's main number on my iPhone. It went straight to a generic voicemail message that said, "Thank you for calling. Our office hours are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Please leave a message. I looked at Evan and said, "Okay, so no one's there." Evan's face changed a little. He got quiet. "Then who is calling from the front desk?" And right when he said that, the phone rang again. Front desk. At this point, my heart was already pounding and I could feel it in my throat. I grabbed the receiver, but my hand was shaking enough that I almost dropped it. I answered and said, "Hello?" And a voice finally spoke. It sounded normal, like a regular guy. Not whispering, not deep, not creepy voice, just normal. He said, "Hey." I didn't answer right away because it was so unexpected that my brain kind of stalled. Then he goes, really casually, "Just checking, are you guys still in the room?" My stomach dropped, like that heavy falling feeling. Because first of all, who says "you guys"? Like, how does front desk know there's two of us? We checked in together, sure, but still. And second, why would they need to confirm we're still in the room? I said, "Yeah, who is this?" He didn't answer that. He just repeated, like he was trying to sound patient, "You're still in there, right?" Evan mouthed, "Hang up." So I did. I slammed the receiver harder than I meant to, and the phone made that plastic clack sound. We just sat there for a second, listening. Evan whispered, "That's not staff." I whispered back, "No." And I know the obvious thing is call the cops, but I want people to understand the situation. We had like one bar of service, maybe, and it wasn't like we had a guy actively breaking in yet. It was that horrible in-between where you're scared, but you're also like, am I overreacting? Also, stupidly, I didn't want to call 911 and be like, someone called our room and asked if we were still inside. I could already picture the operator being like, "Okay, did they threaten you?" And me having to explain that no, they didn't, which makes you sound dramatic. So instead, I did the dumb, reasonable thing. I went to the door and locked the deadbolt. Then I flipped that little security latch, the one that lets the door open like 2 inches. Evan said, "Look out the peephole." I leaned in. The hallway was dim, like only every other light was on. I could see the ugly carpet and the walls and a closed door across from us. No one was standing in front of our door. Evan exhaled, like that meant it was fine. See? No one. But that's what I got this gut feeling that made it worse. Because if you're messing with someone and you know they might look, you don't stand right in the middle of the peephole. You stand to the side. And I couldn't see the sides. I backed away from the door and said, "Stop answering the phone." Evan nodded and picked up his phone, trying to get a call out. He went to the window because sometimes service is better near it. Outside, the snow was coming down hard, and the parking lot lights were making everything look like static. The Subaru was already getting buried. The room phone rang again. Front desk. I just stared at it like it was alive. It stopped, then rang again, like whoever it was had their finger on redial. Evan hissed, "Don't." So I didn't. I let it ring until it stopped. And right after it stopped, we heard something outside. Not loud, not a bang, just soft footsteps on the carpet. Slow. Then a pause right in front of our door. My whole body went tight, like I realized I'd been holding my breath. Then this quiet bump, like a shoulder or hand, touched the door. And then the handle moved. Not violently, not shaking the door, just the smallest test, like someone was trying to see if it would open without making noise. Evan's eyes went wide. He whispered, "Okay,
no, someone's out there. I went to the peephole again, but I still couldn't see anyone. Because if someone stands close to the door off to the side, you basically see nothing, just empty hallway. And that's what I saw. Empty hallway. But I knew someone was right there. The handle moved again, just a little. And then, right as we're standing there frozen, the phone rang. Front desk. At the same time. Like they were doing both. Like one person was at our door while the other person called, or one person set it up and was watching. I don't know. I still don't know. Evan whispered, "We need to do something." So we did the only thing that felt like doing something without opening the door. We barricaded it.
We grabbed the dresser and slid it over as quietly as possible. It was one of those cheap hotel dressers, so it scraped the carpet and made this low, ripping sound. I hated how loud it felt. Then we pushed the little table against it too, just to add weight. I know barricading like that isn't some perfect solution. If someone really wanted in, they could probably get in. But it made us feel like we weren't just sitting there waiting. Evan kept trying to get service, walking back and forth by the window. He finally got one call to go through to his mom, of all people, and it cut out after like 10 seconds. I heard him say, "We're fine, but something's weird. I'll call you back." And then it dropped. We tried texting friends. The messages didn't go through. The phone rang again and again. We didn't answer. After a while, it started coming in waves. I remember looking at my phone and seeing the time because I needed something to focus on besides panicking. 2:13 a.m., the phone rang. 2:19 a.m., it rang again. 2:27 a.m., again. Every time, the caller ID said front desk. It was like someone was checking a schedule, like they were seeing if we'd break and answer or if we'd fall asleep. At one point, it rang and then stopped, and then it rang immediately, like whoever it was getting annoyed. Evan whispered, "What if it's a prank?" I said, "From who? The ghosts of the lodge?" I was trying to joke, but it came out flat. My throat felt tight. And I kept thinking about that line, "Are you guys still in the room?" Not, "Everything okay?" Not, "We got a complaint." Not, "This is front desk." Just checking if we were still inside, like we were food in a container. Around 3 a.m., the phone rang again, and this time it went to voicemail because we didn't pick up. The little message light blinked. Evan and I stared at it for a full minute before I hit the button to listen, because I honestly didn't want to. There was a few seconds of silence. Then the same normal voice, calm as anything, said, "Open up. I'm trying to help you." That was it. No explanation, no name, not, "This is staff," just, "Open up." Evan shook his head slowly, like his brain was refusing to accept it. He whispered, "What help us from what?" We didn't sleep after that. Not really. We just took turns sitting on the bed with our backs to the wall, staring at the door and listening. Every time the heater clicked, I jumped. Every time the wind hit the window, I thought it was someone. At some point, we heard footsteps again in the hallway, and both of us went completely still. They stopped near our door. There was a long pause, then another soft test on the handle. This time, it was slightly harder, like they were getting impatient. The deadbolt held, the latch held. The dresser didn't matter for that, but it mattered for us. Then we heard the footsteps move away, and the phone rang one more time after that. We didn't answer. Eventually, the call stopped. I must have dozed off for a few minutes because the next time I checked my phone, it was like 6:40 a.m., and the sky outside the window was turning that gray blue. The snow had piled up on the windowsill, and the cars in the lot looked half buried. Evan was awake, sitting up. eyes red like he hadn't blinked all night. He said, "We should go down there." And I didn't want to, but I also didn't want to stay in that room one more minute. So we moved the dresser back slowly, listening the whole time. I unlocked the deadbolt, but I kept the latch on and I cracked the door to look. Nothing. Empty hallway. We packed like our hair was on fire. I didn't even fold anything. I just shoved clothes into my bag. Evan limped around grabbing his stuff and wincing every time he stepped wrong. We left the room and walked down to the lobby. The whole place felt shut down, like it wasn't closed early, it was closed, period. The lights were off, except for this faint glow from a vending machine. The front desk area was empty. No staff, no bell, no radio playing, nothing. There was a sign on the counter that said "closed due to weather" with a phone number underneath. Evan said, quietly, so there was literally nobody. I walked behind the counter, which I know you're not supposed to do, but at that point, I didn't care about rules. I just wanted to see if someone was back there. There was a little office door that was shut, and I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Nothing. I tried the handle. Locked. We stood there, both of us just staring at the empty lobby like it was wrong, because it was. I looked at the desk phone behind the counter. It was the same type of beige phone as in our room. I don't know what I expected, like a guy popping up and going, "Oh, sorry, that was me." But there was no one. We left. We didn't even check out properly. We just walked out the front doors into the snow and went to the Subaru. Evan had to scrape ice off the windshield with one of those cheap little plastic scrapers, and his hands were shaking from the cold and from stress. We threw our bags in the back, and I kept looking around the lot like I was going to see someone watching from behind a car. I didn't, which almost made it worse. Driving down the mountain was awful, white-knuckle the whole way. The road had those fresh plow lines, but it was still slick and you couldn't see far ahead. We didn't talk much. Every so often, Evan would say, "That was real, right?" Like he needed me to confirm he didn't imagine it. When we finally got to an area with better service, Evan called the lodge number again. This time, someone answered, like around 9:15 a.m. It was a woman, and she sounded confused and kind of annoyed, like we were interrupting her morning coffee. Evan said, "Hi, we stayed there last night. Someone kept calling our room from front desk, and someone tried our door." And she immediately went, "No, we don't have overnight staff on weekdays in winter, not unless there's a big group." Evan said, "Well, someone called us like 10 times. Caller ID said front desk." She paused and said, "That phone system is internal only. Nobody should be able to spoof front desk from outside." Evan asked if she could check the logs or something, and she did that thing people do when they want you to go away. She said, "Sometimes the lines act up in storms. Sometimes rooms call each other by accident." I took the phone and said, "Okay, but what about the handle? We heard someone test the door." She didn't have anything for that. She just said, "I'm sorry you felt unsafe," in that customer service voice. That was it. No satisfying answer. No, we found the guy. No, we checked cameras. Honestly, I don't even know if they had cameras. And before anyone says, "Why didn't you demand more?" or "Why didn't you call the cops in the morning?" I don't have a great reason. I just know how it felt in the moment. We were tired, we were stressed, and we were in that mindset of, "We're out, let's just be out." Also, if I'm being honest, part of me didn't want to find out. Like, if there was a real explanation, it was going to be something awful. An employee messing with people, someone hiding in the building, someone with access to their phone system. I'd rather not know. We left as soon as the roads cleared. I still don't know who was calling, but I know it wasn't the front desk. Nothing movie scary happened after that, which almost makes it worse, because it means whoever it was just walked away. And I'm telling you, if a place tells you the lobby is closed and you get a front desk call at 2 a.m., don't answer it. Just don't. This happened a few years ago, early February, like one of those weeks where the weather app basically just shows a little snowflake every day and you stop even looking at it. It was me and my best friend Cody. We were driving back late at night because it was literally the only time that worked. Cody had to be at work early the next morning and I had an 8 a.m. class, so we were trying to get back the same night even though the forecast looked bad. I know that sounds dumb, but it wasn't like we were going on some fun road trip. It was more like, if we don't do this tonight, it screws up the whole week. And I was driving my 2006 Toyota Corolla. It's not like a cool car or anything. It was that car I kept alive because it was paid off. The radio in it barely worked, so I had one of those cheap Bluetooth FM transmitters plugged into the cigarette lighter. If you've ever used one of those things, you already know how sketchy they can be. Mine always had that static hiss on certain stations, and sometimes it would cut out and come back for no reason. We left around, I want to say, 9:30 p.m. By like 10:40, it was already getting annoying. We both had hoodies on under our winter coats because the Corolla's heat would blow warm for 5 minutes and then go back to being kind of lukewarm. Cody was in the passenger seat, half eating gas station snacks, like beef jerky and sunflower seeds. We'd stopped at a Casey's, I'm pretty sure, and he bought a big soda and then complained about the price the whole time. Google Maps rerouted us off the main road because there was some accident or closure or something. So we're on this rural 2-lane county road, and at first it was fine, just dark and empty. Cornfields on both sides, the occasional fence, nothing else. The station we were listening to kept cutting out because of my stupid transmitter. It was some local station playing random throwback songs, and every time I hit a certain stretch, it would turn into that shh static. Cody kept messing with it and going, "Dude, your car sucks," like that was news to me. I remember being mildly stressed, but not like scared. More like, great, of course the weather's gonna get worse now. Then it turned fast. 1 minute I could see the road reflectors. The next minute it was like someone flipped the world to hard mode. The snow wasn't just falling, it was blowing sideways. The headlights were catching it and making this wall effect where you could only see like 10 feet in front of the car. Everything looked the same. Just white and gray and the faint dark lines where the ditch probably was. Cody was like, "Should we turn back?" And I said, "To where?" Because honestly, we didn't even know where we were at that point. Google Maps was still talking, but it kept recalculating, and the little blue dot would jump. I remember thinking, this is how people end up in a ditch. I slowed down to like 25, maybe even 20. I had my hazards on for a bit because it felt safer, then turned them off because I didn't want to be that guy blinking in the middle of nowhere. There was nobody else out there anyway. And then my car started acting weird. At first, it was little stuff. The RPM needle would dip like it was gonna stall, then pop back up. Then the dashboard lights did this quick flicker. It was so fast, I thought I imagined it. Cody noticed too because he stopped chewing and just looked at the dash. I tapped the gas a little just to keep it going, and I was like, come on, come on. Then the engine just died. No dramatic explosion or anything. It just went quiet, like somebody unplugged it. The steering got heavy immediately, and I had that split second of panic where I realized I was still moving and I couldn't just stop in the middle of the lane in a whiteout. So I coasted and fought the wheel and aimed for what I thought was the shoulder. There was a pull-off area up ahead that I barely saw until we were almost past it, like a little closed rest area or something. Just a widened patch of road with a sign that was covered in snow. I managed to get us into it and stop. I put it in park, turned the key, tried to start it again. Click, click, nothing. I tried again like an idiot because sometimes you just do that even though you know it won't help. Nothing. Cody goes, no way, dude. I turned the hazards on. The orange light on the dash was blinking and reflecting off the snow in front of us. The first thing I did was grab my phone. I had an iPhone at the time and I checked service.
1 bar, then it dropped to no service. Cody checked his, same thing. He tried walking his phone up toward the windshield like that changes anything.
I know people are going to say, why didn't you just leave the car and walk? But you have to understand, in a whiteout, walking is actually dangerous. You can lose the road in seconds. Like you step 10 feet away, you turn around, you might not even see your car anymore. And it was freezing. Plus, we didn't know how far the next house or gas station was. It could have been 5 miles. It could have been 15. Also, I didn't want to be the idiot who abandons the car and freezes out there. That's a real thing that happens. So we did what people do. We sat there and tried to problem solve. Cody texted his girlfriend something like, "Car died, we're stuck, might be a while." He showed me his screen like he wanted me to confirm it was real. I texted my older brother because he was the kind of person who would actually answer. I typed, "Car stalled in snow, no service, we pulled off, might be stuck." I hit send, and it just did that thing where it sits there and doesn't deliver. Inside the car, it got quiet in that uncomfortable way. No engine noise, just the wind hitting the car and the faint ticking from the hazards and our breathing. My hands were already shaking, not even just from fear. The cold starts getting to you fast when the heat stops. Cody was like, "Try it again." So I did. I turned the key and the engine sort of tried, like it coughed once. Then nothing. And that's when the radio crackled. At first, I didn't think anything of it because my transmitter always did that little static pop like it's switching frequencies. But then, through the speakers, a man's voice came on. Not the radio host, not a song, just a normal voice, kind of calm, like he was sitting in a warm room somewhere. And he said, "Car died, we're stuck, might be a while." Me and Cody both froze, like I felt my stomach drop so hard it was like missing a step on stairs. Cody slowly turned and looked at me, and he goes, "Tell me you heard that." I didn't answer right away because my brain was trying to make it make sense. Honestly, my first thought was maybe my phone did that thing where it reads texts out loud, like some accessibility setting or Siri or whatever. But it didn't sound like Siri. It sounded like a real guy. And I hadn't said that out loud. Cody hadn't said that out loud. That sentence was his text to his girlfriend. Cody picked up his phone and checked it like the phone was going to explain itself. The radio did that static hiss again, and I reached down and turned the volume knob, and my hand was shaking so bad I almost missed it. Cody goes, "Maybe it's picking up somebody's CB radio or something." And I said, "Through my car speakers?" He goes, "Dude, I don't know. Those transmitters are garbage." And that was true. It was always kind of glitchy, but it usually worked. So we clung to that explanation because the other one was way worse. For a minute, nothing happened. Just wind. Just that dead quiet feeling inside the car, like the car itself was holding its breath. Cody tried calling his girlfriend anyway. He went straight to call failed. I tried calling my brother. Same thing. Then the radio crackled again, and the same voice said, "Cody, you still there?" The way he said Cody's name was what messed me up. It wasn't like he was yelling it. It was casual, like he'd said it 100 times. Cody's face went pale. He just whispered, "What the?" I leaned forward and looked out the windshield, like I was going to suddenly see a guy standing there. But it was just wind blowing across the headlights, like TV static. I checked the rearview mirror. Nothing but darkness and white. Cody goes, "Lock the doors." And I know that sounds obvious, but in the moment, it wasn't like we were expecting someone to walk up. We were thinking electronics, glitch, random frequency. Still, my gut feeling was screaming that something wasn't right. So I hit the lock button. You could hear the little thunk of the locks. The radio stayed quiet for a second. Then the voice came back again. "Turn the hazards off for a second."
My face got hot, even though the car was freezing. Because that wasn't some random radio thing. That was a person telling us something about what we were doing right then. Cody leaned forward, looking out his window, like he could see through the snow better if he tried harder. He goes, "How would he even see that?" I didn't answer, because there was no good answer. I reached over and turned the hazards off. And I know people are going to say, "Why would you listen?" But I swear to God, it wasn't like I was obeying him. It was more like I needed to know if this was real. Like if I turned them off and the voice reacted, then it meant someone was actually watching us. The blinking stopped. The inside of the car got even darker. For 2 seconds, nothing. Then, the voice came through again, and it sounded almost satisfied.
"Yeah, that's better. I can't see you through that glare." Cody grabbed my arm hard, like he was trying to anchor himself. He goes, really quiet, "He's out there." And that's when I heard it. A crunch. Not the wind, not snow hitting the car. Footsteps, right next to the passenger side. Cody's eyes went huge. He slowly turned his head to the right, trying to look out his window. But the window was fogged in the corners and everything outside was just moving white. Then there was a soft knock on the passenger window. Not a bang, not an accident, like knuckles on glass. Cody flinched so hard he smacked his knee on the glove box. I was sitting there with both hands on the steering wheel, and I realized I was gripping it like I was driving, even though the car was dead. The radio crackled again. "Hey," the voice said, like he was annoyed we were making this difficult. "Just crack the window a little, I'll tell you what to do." That line is burned into my head, because who says that? In a whiteout, on a closed pull-off to strangers, while somehow talking through their speakers? Cody shook his head fast, like no. He mouthed, "Don't." I didn't move. I couldn't. I was thinking about all the stuff you hear, like people pretending to need help to get you to open your door. And I kept thinking if I crack the window, he can reach in, he can unlock it, he can do anything. Another crunch closer to my side now, like he walked around the front of the car. Then a knock on my window. Same soft knock. My heart was pounding so hard I felt it in my ears. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my phone between the seat and the center console and had to fumble for it. I tried to keep my voice steady, and I said, "We don't need help." And I know it was stupid to respond, I know, but it felt worse to sit there and pretend he wasn't real. Like maybe if I acted normal, he'd get bored. The radio didn't answer right away. Then, in this calm, normal tone, like we were all just inconvenienced together, he said, "Your battery's fine, you just flooded it. Crack the window a little and I'll tell you what to do." Cody leaned in toward me and whispered, "How does he know your battery's fine?" And that's when it clicked for me that none of it mattered. The details didn't have to make sense for it to be dangerous. The point was he was outside our car in a whiteout and he wanted us to open something. I tried my phone again. No service. Cody goes, "Maybe 911 still works." So I tried. It didn't even ring, it just failed. That made me feel trapped in a way I've never felt before. Like the whole world outside the car disappeared, and the only thing that existed was the glass and locks between us and whoever was out there. The radio hissed. "Cody," the voice said again, closer this time, like it was coming in clearer. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Cody's breathing got fast. I could hear it, like he was about to start panicking fully. I whispered, "Don't talk, just don't." And I know, again, you're thinking, just drive away, but the car wouldn't start. And even if it did, we were basically blind out there. If I drove off the pull-off wrong, we'd be in the ditch, and then we'd really be stuck. We sat there, dead quiet, listening. There was movement outside, like he was shifting his weight in the snow. Another crunch, Then nothing. A full minute passed. Then the soft knock again, but this time on the back passenger window. Cody turned his whole body, trying to look behind him. He whispered, "He's moving around." And my brain started doing that thing where it tries to bargain, like maybe he's just some guy who thinks we're someone else. Maybe he's trying to help, but he's being weird. But then I thought, if he was trying to help, he would be yelling, "Hey, are you okay?" like a normal person. He wouldn't be hijacking our radio and quoting our texts. And then something happened that made it even more real. The door handle on Cody's side lifted. Not all the way because it was locked, but you could hear it, that little clack of someone testing it. Cody made this sound like he swallowed a shout. I felt that cold, tight feeling in my chest like my lungs were too small. I said, louder now, "Stop." And right after I said that, the radio blasted with static for a second, and then the voice came through, sharper. "Don't make me wait out here." That was the first time he sounded angry. Cody grabbed the little pocket knife he kept on his keychain, like that was going to do anything through a car window. We stayed quiet. I didn't turn the hazards back on because I didn't want to do anything he told us to do. It felt like if we followed one instruction, it would lead to another. Minutes felt like hours. I kept watching the windshield, like I'd see a shape block the headlights. But the snow was so thick that shapes didn't look like shapes. Everything was just movement. At one point, I thought I saw a shadow off to the right. Cody saw it too, because he whispered, "Is that him?" But it could have been a fence post. It could have been anything. Then, way off in the distance, we saw lights. Not close, but moving, and higher up than a normal car, like a truck. Cody leaned forward and goes, "Is that a plow?" I stared until my eyes hurt. The lights got brighter, then dimmer, like they were coming through waves of snow. I don't think I've ever felt relief like that. Not because I thought we were saved for sure, but because it meant there was a third party, another human, someone who wasn't this voice. As the lights got closer, the radio went dead quiet. No more crackle, no more voice. And the footsteps outside stopped too. Like whoever it was just vanished into the snow. The truck pulled into the pull-off with us, and it was a state plow. Big yellow truck, bright lights. The guy inside had a beanie on and one of those reflective jackets. He got out and walked up to my driver window, and I was so on edge that when he knocked, I almost jumped out of my skin. But this knock was different. Louder, confident, normal. I cracked the window like half an inch, just enough to talk. He goes, "You guys all right? You been sitting here long?" My voice sounded weird, like it didn't belong to me. I said, "Car died. We can't get it started." He looked past me at Cody, then back at the car. He goes, "You got a tow coming?" I said, "No service." He nodded like that was common. He goes, "All right, I can call it in. You can't stay here." And I know I probably should have immediately said there was a man outside our car, but I didn't. I didn't want this plow guy to think we were drunk or messing around or paranoid. And part of me was still trying to convince myself it was the transmitter and a weird coincidence, even though I knew it wasn't. While the plow guy walked back to his truck to radio in, I finally turned my hazards back on. My hands were still shaking. Cody leaned in and whispered, "Where did he go?" I looked out into the snow and said, "I don't know." And it wasn't like we could get out and look, not with the wind and zero visibility. So we just sat there while the plow guy made calls. A tow truck showed up maybe 20 minutes later. It felt like forever, but it also felt fast, like time wasn't moving normal. By then, our car was getting painfully cold. My toes were numb. The tow truck driver hooked up my Corolla, and we sat in the cab of his truck while he drove us to the nearest open place, which was this gas station off the highway that was still open because it was attached to a travel stop. The whole time, my mind kept replaying the voice saying Cody's name. When we got there, I finally asked the tow truck driver, like casually, "Did you see anyone else back there?" And he just looked at me in the mirror and went, "No, nobody should have been parked out there anyway." That was it. That was all he said. Inside the gas station, Cody finally called his girlfriend and I called my brother. Our calls went through like nothing had happened, which almost made me mad. Like, where was that signal when we needed it? We also called the police non-emergency line. And again, I know people will say we should have called 911, but by the time we had service, we weren't in immediate danger anymore, and we didn't even have a good description. We couldn't see the guy, we didn't have a plate number. We didn't even know if he had a car out there or if he walked up from somewhere. The officer basically said because of the storm, they couldn't really search the area right then. They took the report, asked the usual questions, and that was it. The next day, when the sun was up and the storm was calmer, it all sounded less real when I tried to explain it, even to myself. But here's what I can't get past. That voice repeated Cody's text message word for word. Then it used his name. Then it told us to turn our hazards off because the glare was in the way. And then it tried Cody's door handle. I unplugged that Bluetooth/FM transmitter as soon as I got home and threw it in the trash. Not even kidding. I didn't sell it. I didn't keep it just in case. I didn't want that thing in my car ever again. Cody and I still talk about it sometimes, usually when the weather gets bad and everyone starts posting about "be safe out there." We never found out who it was. And what really messes me up is thinking about how close it felt. Like if I'd cracked the window even a little more, if the locks didn't work, if the plow truck didn't happen to be on that route. I still wonder what would have happened if those headlights never showed up.
Out of everything we heard tonight, which story actually unsettled you the most? The first one really got under my skin, but I want to know which one did it for you. Vote for the scariest story in the comments below.